Oysters may be small creatures, but they have a big job. In Volusia County, we can thank these little guys for helping to maintain a healthy marine ecosystem.
Oysters are considered a keystone species in the state of Florida. So what that means is that there's a variety of species of plants and animals that rely on them for habitat, they rely on them for protection or for food. So much that if the oyster were to disappear, the ecosystem would collapse. So they're very important for our marine environment to make sure that our ecosystem is staying in check and they're providing all of these elements for different species.
In addition to providing habitat and protection for other species and filtering the water, oysters also play a part in reducing erosion along shorelines.
Oysters are also an ecosystem engineer in Florida, meaning they have the ability to modify the surrounding area to be what they need it to be. So as oyster reefs start to grow, they start to accumulate sediment and they can start to spread. So they help to protect the shoreline by buffering any boat wakes that would be hitting grasses or anything up on the shoreline. Having the oyster beds in front of the shorelines is kind of the first wave of defense against erosion.
This marsh was created in 2014 to help to restore the natural environment here, and oyster bags have been placed along the shoreline to help with the erosion.
However, oyster populations in Florida are declining due to overharvesting, brown tide events, rising sea levels, and careless boaters. That's where organizations like the Marine Discovery Center came in, working with partners to create the Shuck and Share program.
Shuck and Share was created in 2014 to provide a stable source of shell for our shoreline restoration practitioners. So what we noticed as a group is that we had all these great shoreline restoration ideas, but no shell to be able to put back out onto the shoreline. So we went out for a grant, and Marine Discovery Center was able to get a grant that started the Shuck and Share program, and since then it has grown.
So how does Shuck and Share work? The Marine Discovery Center has partnered with restaurants in the county who've agreed to collect their oyster shells rather than throwing them away. Volunteers pick up these shells and bring them to the center where they're sorted and left to sit in the sun. This process allows the environment to destroy any pathogens or bacteria on the shells. Once cleared for use, the Marine Discovery Center works with volunteers to create either oyster bags or mats to be deployed into our waterways. Once in the water, the shells provide a place for baby oysters to settle and grow.
These are oyster bags. They weigh about 30 pounds a piece, and they're covered in a Naltex plastic, which is a marine grade mesh that's used for aquaculture. So it's safe to put in the water, doesn't leach chemicals, it doesn't break down over time. We put these guys on the shoreline and they help to accumulate sediment and hold on to sand that would otherwise erode into the water. And they're also act as a wave break. They buffer against any waves that may be coming up on the shoreline. And they provide habitat for oysters. So their purpose is really triple-fold, that they can do a lot to protect the shoreline in one small package. Oyster mats are used specifically for oyster reefs. It's a single 16 by 16 grid with 36 oyster shells on it that are placed onto an eroded oyster reef that has been raked back down to elevation. When you put thousands of them out, they create a quilt that can help to bring back the oyster population. This theory was created by University of Central Florida and is used primarily in Canaveral National Seashore by the Sea Lab students and graduate students at University of Central Florida.
So how successful has the Shuck and Share program been since the Marine Discovery Center began in 2014?
In Volusia County, we recycle oyster shells from 17 local restaurants, and in this year we've recycled 100,000 pounds of shell. Total, we've recycled 600,000 pounds of shell, and most of that is already back out in the environment, creating new oyster reefs. By quarantining these shells for at least 6 months before we bag them up and deploy them, we're making sure that the shell is safe. Bugs are picking them clean, rain is washing everything away, the sun bakes them dry. So at the end of that 6 months, you have this pristine calcium carbonate shell that is safe to put back on our ecosystems. If they weren't recycled with the Shuck and Share program, they would end up in a landfill. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping all that extra waste out of the landfill and repurposing it to create new oyster reefs.
To learn more about the Shuck and Share program, including volunteer opportunities and participating restaurants, visit shuckandshare.org. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Kate Sark.